The storm was endless. Snow fell from the sky like sharp knives, cutting the air into pieces. The wind screamed across the empty mountains, carrying voices that sounded like ghosts. It was the kind of storm that no traveler should enter, but she had no choice. The alien mother walked slowly, her arms wrapped tightly around a small bundle. Inside that bundle was her baby, weak and pale, his little breaths almost gone. Her own body shook from the cold, but her eyes stayed on the child, never leaving his face. She whispered soft words in her language, words that gave her strength, but even her words were breaking under the weight of the storm. The snow clung to her hair and her skin. Her skin was green, glowing faintly like light under water. Her hair, long and silver, fell across her face as she stumbled. Every step she took left a deep mark in the snow, but the wind quickly buried it again. It was as if the storm wanted to erase her and her child. Her baby coughed weakly. She stopped and held him close, pressing her face to his small cheek. The baby was cold, far too cold. Tears fell from her eyes, but the wind froze them before they could drop. Her voice trembled, but she began to sing. The song was old, older than her people remembered. A lullaby of hope, sung to babies when the nights were long and the days full of hunger. Her voice cut through the wind like a thin flame. She sang not to the storm, but to her child. Her song said, "You are not alone. I am with you. I will never leave you." Her body ached. Her breath came out in short gasps. Still, she kept singing. Her child's eyes opened for a moment, glowing faint green like hers. He looked at her, weak but still listening. The song was all she had left to give him. Her heart screamed that she was losing him, and yet she sang. The storm answered with greater fury. The snow swirled around her, trying to silence her song, but she lifted her head and sang louder. Her voice carried over the empty fields of white. She wanted the universe itself to hear her. If no one else came, at least the stars would know her love. Her knees gave way, and she sank into the snow. She curled around the baby, using her body as a shield. The cold bit into her skin, her hands almost numb. She whispered between the lines of her song, "Stay, my child, stay. Do not go where I cannot follow." Her song faded, her strength slipping away. Her eyes closed for a moment, and she thought it was the end. But then, through the wall of snow and wind, a shadow moved. At first, she thought it was a trick of the storm, a ghost or a monster. Her heart raced, fear mixing with fading hope. The shadow grew clearer. It was tall, strong, walking against the storm with heavy steps. Not alien, not one of her people, something she had only heard in stories told by the elders. A figure wrapped in strange armor, metal and cloth. A figure from legend, from the stars. A human. She stopped singing, her voice caught in her throat. The baby stirred faintly, as if sensing the presence of the stranger. Her heart screamed warnings. Humans are dangerous, humans bring war, and yet, another voice whispered inside her, humans bring hope. The figure stepped closer, snow sliding off his shoulders. He carried something glowing in his hand, a small light burning against the darkness. His eyes met hers through the storm, and in that single moment, the mother knew her song had been heard. The blizzard roared. The baby trembled. The mother held her breath, and the human came closer. The figure came closer, step by step, each movement slow but strong. The storm tried to hide him, wrapping him in waves of snow, yet he kept walking. The alien mother held her baby tighter, fear and hope twisting together inside her chest. Her voice had fallen silent, but her song still echoed in her mind. She did not know if this shadow in the storm had come to save her or to end her. The human stopped only a few steps away. He was tall, his body wrapped in thick armor, strange metal mixed with cloth. Snow covered his shoulders, but the glow from his hand pushed the darkness back. It was not fire, but some kind of light, steady and warm. The mother's eyes locked on it, because that light felt alive, almost like a heartbeat. He raised his head, and she saw his face for the first time. Skin pale, marked by scars, eyes sharp and steady. His breath came out as smoke in the freezing air. He looked at her, then at the child, and his expression changed. The cold mask of a soldier melted into something else, something almost human, a kind of sadness, a kind of care. The mother whispered weakly, her voice breaking, "Please, help." Her words were small, lost in the storm, but he heard them. He knelt down in the snow, bringing the light closer to the baby. The glow spread across the child's skin, soft and gentle. The baby's shallow breathing grew stronger, if only a little. The mother's heart almost stopped, unable to believe it. The human spoke, his voice deep, steady. "Hold him closer to the light." His words were strange, but clear enough to understand. She obeyed, pressing the baby to the glow. The warmth touched the child's face, and for the first time in days, his skin looked less pale. The baby coughed softly, then sighed. The mother felt tears rise to her eyes again, but this time they were not only from sorrow. She looked at the human, unsure if she should thank him or fear him. Legends told of humans as destroyers, as conquerors who burned worlds, but this one had come from the storm carrying light, not fire. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why do you help us?" The human did not answer immediately. He studied her, studied the child, as if weighing some heavy choice. Finally, he said only one word. Survivors. The word hit her like a stone. It carried weight, sorrow, and something else. Responsibility. He was searching for survivors. That meant there were more like her, scattered in the storm, dying in the cold. That also meant he was fighting something bigger than her pain. She wanted to ask more, but her strength was fading. The human stood again, pulling something from his pack. It was a small container of water, glowing faintly as if touched by the same strange light. He offered it to her. Her hands shook as she took it, letting a drop touch her child's lips. The baby drank weakly, then more. His chest rose with deeper breaths, his eyes opening just enough to see the human. For the first time, the child did not cry. Instead, he stared in silence, as if recognizing him. The storm howled again, louder than before. The human looked over his shoulder, scanning the white horizon. The mother followed his gaze, and for the first time she noticed shadows moving in the distance. Figures, dark and fast, circling in the snow. They were not friendly. Her people had spoken of hunters, twisted survivors who had given up hope and turned to prey on the weak. Her blood froze, and she clutched her baby close. The human's hand moved to his side, pulling out a weapon, unlike anything she had ever seen. It hummed with energy, glowing faintly like the device he carried. His voice was steady when he spoke. "We need to move." He reached out his hand to her, strong and unshaking. She hesitated, the storm still whispering doubts in her mind. But then her baby breathed against her chest, warmer than before. Her choice was clear. She took his hand. The human pulled her to her feet, his grip firm. The hunters in the snow grew closer, their shapes sharp against the white. The storm screamed, the wind rose, the night deepened. But now she was not alone. The human led them forward, into the blizzard, and behind them the shadows followed. The storm swallowed every sound. Snow struck against their faces like sharp glass, and the night seemed endless. The human held the alien mother's hand firmly as they moved, his other hand gripping the glowing device that pushed away the dark. She stumbled often, weak from the cold, but he pulled her forward each time, never letting her fall. In her arms, the baby stirred faintly, his chest rising and falling with fragile breaths. The mother kept whispering her song, too weak to sing, but unwilling to stop. Her words were broken, carried away by the wind, yet she hoped the child could hear them. The human glanced at her sometimes, his expression unreadable, but his pace steady and sure. Every step they took seemed to fight against death itself. Still, she feared it was not enough. The baby coughed again, a sound so small it almost disappeared in the storm. She stopped suddenly, panic flashing in her eyes. The human turned, his face tight with concern. He lowered the glowing device closer to the child, and the warm light spread across the baby's skin. For a moment, the weak chest rose higher, stronger. The mother let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. The human placed a hand against the baby's forehead. He frowned, his eyes narrowing. He muttered words she did not understand, a language sharp and quick, but his actions spoke clearer than his words. He was worried. The mother could see it, and her fear deepened. She asked softly, her voice shaking, "Can you save him?" Her words floated like snowflakes, fragile, desperate. The human's eyes lifted to hers, and he hesitated. He was a man of strength, but in that moment she saw the truth. He did not know. Finally, he said only, "I will try." Those words were not a promise, but they gave her something. Not certainty, but hope. She nodded weakly, clutching her child closer. The human adjusted his pack, pulling out another small container. Inside was a strange, clear liquid, glowing faintly like the light he carried. He opened it carefully and dipped his finger inside. Then he touched the liquid gently to the child's lips. The baby swallowed, coughing at first, then calming. A soft warmth spread across his cheeks, and his breathing steadied. The mother gasped, tears falling again, but this time they were mixed with relief. She looked at the human with wide eyes, her voice breaking. "What is it?" He shook his head. "Medicine. Not enough, but better than nothing." The storm roared again, louder, stronger, as if angered by their survival. The human glanced around, scanning the horizon. His sharp eyes caught movements in the distance. The hunters still followed, shadows in the white. He tightened his grip on the weapon at his side, but did not stop moving. "Keep going," he said, his voice steady. "We are not safe yet." They pushed forward step by step. The mother leaned on him more now, her strength almost gone, but her will unbroken. Her child slept against her chest, breathing slowly. Each fragile breath was a victory. Each fragile breath reminded her that life still clung to him. She could not give up. Not now. The human glanced at her again, his eyes softer this time. He had seen many worlds, many survivors, but something in this mother's struggle touched him deeply. Her strength was not the strength of soldiers or weapons. It was the strength of love, fragile yet unbreakable. And in that moment, he swore silently to himself that he would not let this child die. The snow began to thin slightly, and in the distance, faint lights glimmered. The mother's eyes widened at the sight, her voice trembling. "Home," she whispered. Though it was not truly her home, it was shelter, fire, walls against the cold. The human nodded once, his pace quickening. Behind them, the hunter still followed, dark and patient. But ahead, for the first time in days, there was hope. The baby stirred again, a soft sigh escaping his lips. The mother kissed his forehead, whispering softly, "You will live, my child. You must live." The human did not speak, but the light in his hand glowed brighter, and together they walked into the storm toward the waiting lights. The fragile life in her arms carried forward by love, by will, and by a stranger who refused to turn away. The lights in the distance flickered like stars trapped on the ground. They were faint and far away, but to the alien mother they looked like a promise. Her tired eyes focused on them, her heart begging her body not to collapse. The human saw them too, his pace quickening, his grip on her hand firm and steady. But behind them, the shadows in the snow were closer. The storm seemed alive now. The wind howled as if it wanted to warn them, or perhaps trap them. Dark figures moved through the white haze, their shapes stretching and bending with every flash of snow. The mother clutched her baby tighter, her breath shaking. She knew those shapes. She had heard stories whispered by survivors, hunters. Once they had been like her. Once they had families, but the storm had taken their minds, leaving only hunger and cruelty. Now they hunted the weak, stealing what little warmth was left. The human slowed his steps, his sharp eyes scanning the storm. He raised his hand, signaling her to stop. She froze, her heart pounding. The baby stirred, whimpering softly. The human's weapon hummed in his grip, glowing faintly like fire hidden inside steel. He muttered under his breath, words she did not understand, but his body was ready. He was preparing for battle. The first hunter appeared from the storm, tall, thin, skin stretched tight over bones, eyes glowing faint yellow, its mouth twisted into a broken grin. It hissed when it saw them, the sound like ice cracking. More hunters followed, crawling through the snow, their bodies bent and twisted. The mother stepped back in fear, pressing the baby close to her chest. The human did not move, his stance firm as a wall. The lead hunter let out a scream, and the others rushed forward. The storm seemed to explode with them, snow spinning like blades. The human lifted his weapon, and the night burned. A bright flash of energy tore through the air, striking the hunter. It fell into the snow, its body smoking. The others paused, startled, but then they screamed louder and charged again. The mother gasped, her voice trembling. "There are too many." The human did not look at her, his voice steady. "Keep moving. Don't stop." He fired again, each shot cutting through the storm, each strike throwing back another hunter. But for every one that fell, more shapes appeared in the distance. The snow itself seemed to give birth to them, endless and hungry. The mother's legs shook as she stumbled forward. The lights of the village were closer now, but still far. Her baby whimpered again, the sound small against the storm. She sang softly, her voice shaking, trying to calm him, trying to calm herself. The human stayed close, firing at the hunters, his voice low but firm. "Don't look back, just run." She forced her legs to move, step by step. The snow tried to drag her down. The cold tried to steal her strength, but she thought of her child, of his small breaths. She thought of the song she had sung, of the promise she had made, and she ran. The hunters screamed behind them, but the human's weapon roared louder. Flashes of light lit up the storm, shadows twisting and breaking. The mother's heart pounded with every step. The lights of the village grew larger, brighter. She could almost see the outline of walls, the shapes of cabins, home for someone, safety for her child. If they could reach it, they might live. At last, the human shouted, his voice rising above the storm. "There, inside the walls, hurry." She pushed herself harder, her breath burning in her chest. The baby cried weakly, but she held him close, whispering, "Almost there, almost safe." The gates of the village came into view, old wood and iron covered in snow. Figures stood at the walls, holding torches, their eyes wide with fear and hope. Behind them, the hunters screamed one last time, but the human turned, his weapon glowing brighter than before. He fired a blast so strong it shook the ground. The storm swallowed the hunters in light and fire. The mother stumbled through the gates, the human close behind. The doors slammed shut, cutting off the storm. For the first time in days, she felt warmth. But she knew the danger was not over. The storm was still out there, alive, waiting, and the hunters would not stop. The gates closed behind them with a heavy sound. The storm still roared outside, but inside the walls there was silence. The alien mother stumbled forward, her legs finally giving out. She fell to her knees in the snow, clutching her baby close. The child's small chest rose and fell slowly. his breaths thin but steady. The human stood beside her, his weapon still glowing faintly, his eyes sharp, scanning the shadows. Figures approached from the cabins, carrying torches that flickered against the dark. Their faces were pale, their bodies thin, survivors of the storm. They stared at the human with fear and awe, whispers spreading among them. Is it really him? A human? The mother held her baby tighter, shielding him from their eyes. The human ignored the whispers. Hapa. Is focus on her. Come, he said firmly. Inside. The child needs warmth. Two survivors opened the nearest cabin door, and heat spilled out. The smell of fire, wood, and cooked food filled the air. The mother nearly cried as she stepped inside. The room was small, walls made of rough wood, but a fire burned in the center. The warmth touched her skin, melting the frost from her hair. She lowered herself to the floor near the fire, cradling the baby close. The human set down his pack and crouched beside her. He opened another container, pulling out cloth and strange bottles. The survivors kept their distance, staring, whispering. Some looked afraid, others looked desperate. The mother ignored them, her eyes only on the human as he worked. He pressed one bottle to the fire, letting the liquid inside warm. Then he handed it to her. Give him this, small sips. Her hands shook as she lifted the bottle, touching it gently to the baby's lips. The child swallowed, weak at first, then more eagerly. Color returned faintly to his cheeks, and his eyes opened a little. He looked up at her, then at the human. For the first time in days, she saw a spark of life. Her tears fell freely, landing on the baby's small blanket. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. The human said nothing, but his eyes softened. The fire crackled, filling the silence. The mother studied him closely now. He was strange, scarred, his armor worn, but there was strength in him, not just the strength of weapons, but something deeper. He sat with his back straight, his eyes always watching the door, like a man who had never known peace. Finally, she asked softly, Why are you here? Why help us? The human did not answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the flames, shadows dancing across his face. He seemed far away, lost in memories she could not see. At last, he spoke, his voice low. Because no us to us, ni else will. The words were simple, but heavy. The mother frowned, confused. No one else? Where are your people? The human's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. Gone, he said, the words sharp like ice. Silence filled the room again, broken only by the fire. The mother did not know what pain hid behind his word, but she felt it. This human carried loss, just as she did, perhaps more. She wanted to ask more questions, but she stayed quiet. Some truths were too heavy to touch. The baby stirred, letting out a small cry. The mother rocked him gently, humming her song. The human glanced at her, listening for a moment. There was no judgment in his eyes, only something else, respect, maybe even sorrow. When she finished, he spoke again. Your song. It keeps him alive. She looked at him in surprise, unsure how he could know such a thing, but she realized he was right. Her voice, her love gave the child strength to keep breathing. Outside, the storm pounded against the walls, shaking the cabin. The survivors whispered nervously, some moving closer to the fire. One asked in a fearful voice, Will the hunters return? The human looked at the door, his hand resting on his weapon. Yes, he said calmly. They always return. His words chilled the room more than the storm. The mother held her baby close, her heart heavy but determined. If the hunters came again, she would not face them alone. The human was here, a stranger, a legend, a mystery. But tonight, he was their shield. The fire burned low, shadows dancing across the wooden walls. The alien mother sat close, her baby sleeping softly in her arms. The warmth of the flames kept the cold away, but only for now. Outside, the storm screamed like a living thing, pounding against the cabin with icy fists. It was no ordinary storm, and in her heart, she felt it. The human sat near the door, his weapon resting across his knees. His eyes never left the window, where snow pressed against the glass. He looked calm, but the mother could see the tightness in his jaw. The survivors whispered. Among themselves, their voices low, filled with fear. They were safe for the moment, but no one truly believed it would last. The mother finally spoke, her voice soft. You knew they would come, the hunters. The human nodded slowly. They always come, he said. The storm drives them, twists them, feeds them. His words made her shiver. She had always feared the storm, but she had never thought of it as something alive. Drives them? She asked carefully. The human's eyes flickered toward her, his expression unreadable. The storm is not just weather, he said. It hunts, same as they do. The survivors fell silent, their eyes wide. One of them whispered, a curse. Another shook his head, muttering, a spirit of death. But the human spoke again, his voice heavy. Not a spirit, not magic, something older, something real. He leaned closer to the fire, the flames lighting the scars on his face. I have seen storms like this on other worlds, and I have fought what lives inside them." The mother's heart raced. "What lives inside?" she asked, though part of her did not want to know. The human's eyes darkened. "Something that feeds on fear, on cold, on despair. It watches, waiting for the weak. It sends the hunters to break you, and when you fall, it takes the rest." The fire cracked sharply, as if answering his words. The baby stirred, whimpering softly. The mother rocked him gently, her song whispering through the room. Her voice shook, but she would not let silence win. The human listened for a moment, then spoke again. "The storm is growing stronger. It will not stop until nothing is left alive." The survivors panicked, their whispers turning to frightened cries. One stood and shouted, "Then we are already dead." But the human's voice cut through the fear like steel. "No, not if we fight." His words silenced the room. Even the storm seemed to pause for a moment. The mother looked at him, shocked by his certainty. Fight? Against a storm that was alive? The human's hand rested on his weapon. His eyes were steady, burning with something deeper than anger. "I came here to find survivors, yes, but also to end this storm. I cannot do it alone, but I will not turn away." The survivors exchanged nervous looks, unsure if they should believe him. The mother studied his face and saw no lie. He had carried her child through death. He had stood against the hunters. If anyone could fight the storm, it was him. Outside, the wind rose higher, shaking the cabin. Snow pressed harder against the walls, almost like hands clawing to get inside. The flames flickered, shrinking under the weight of the cold. The baby cried suddenly, his voice small but sharp. The mother hushed him quickly, whispering her song. Her voice pushed back the fear, even if only a little. The human stood, his figure tall against the firelight. He looked at her, then at the child. His voice dropped, low but firm. "Your song. Keep singing. It gives him strength, and it gives you strength. But I must face what waits in the storm." Her heart froze at his words. "You will go out there? Alone?" He shook his head slowly. "Not alone. Not this time. I have lost too much already." His eyes burned with memories she could not see. Memories of battles, of loss, of silence after screams. The storm roared again, louder than before. The survivors clung to each other, their fear filling the air. But the mother held her baby close and whispered, "You cannot fight the storm. No one can." The human met her gaze, his voice sharp as steel. "Then I will prove you wrong." The storm howled like a living beast, clawing at the walls of the cabin. Snow slammed against the wood, shaking the structure as if trying to tear it apart. The fire burned weakly, its glow small against the endless white outside. The alien mother clutched her baby close, her voice trembling as she sang her song. A note carried through the room, fragile but unbroken. The human stood tall near the door, his weapon in his hands, his eyes hard as stone. The survivors watched him with wide, fearful eyes. They whispered prayers, curses, anything to give themselves courage. But the human did not waver. He pulled his pack tight, checked his weapon, and looked at the mother. Her song quieted as their eyes met. "You will not survive out there," she said, her voice breaking. He gave a small, almost sad smile. "Maybe not," he replied. "But he will." His eyes fell to the baby, then back to her. The mother's heart clenched. She wanted to stop him, to beg him to stay. But deep inside, she knew he was the only one who could face what waited in the storm. Her song had carried her child this far, but it was the human strength that had carried them both. Now once more, he would carry the burden. He pushed the door open, and the storm rushed inside. Snow and wind screamed like angry spirits. The fire flickered, almost dying. The survivors cried out, some hiding their faces. But the human stepped into the storm without fear. His figure vanished quickly in the white, leaving only the echo of his voice. "For every child, for every mother, I will fight." The door slammed shut behind him. The mother's song grew louder, desperate. She rocked her baby, pressing her forehead against his. Her voice was thin, but it reached beyond the cabin. Carried by the storm, it followed the human into the endless night. Outside, the world was nothing but white and shadow. The human walked through snow that tried to bury him with every step. Dark figures circled, hunters, dozens of them, twisted bodies bent and broken. They hissed and screamed, rushing toward him. He raised his weapon, and light roared. Each blast cut through the darkness, hunters falling one by one, but more kept coming, pulled from the storm itself. The blizzard fought to blind him. The cold bit into his skin. Still, he pressed forward, step by step. And then he saw it, a figure larger than the rest, rising in the heart of the storm. Its body was made of snow and shadow, its eyes burning blue like frozen fire, the storm's master. It towered above the hunters, its roar shaking the mountains. The human's grip tightened on his weapon. This was the enemy he had come to face. Inside the cabin, the mother's song grew stronger. Her voice shook the air, rising above the fear. The baby's small eyes opened, glowing faint green. As if answering her voice, the storm outside faltered for a heartbeat. The human felt it, the weight of the storm lifting just slightly. He knew he was not alone. The great shadow struck, snow whipping like blades. The human fired, light tearing through the dark. The ground shook with each clash, storm against fire, cold against will. The hunters screamed and scattered, but the master fought harder. Its voice was the storm itself, endless and merciless. But the human stood unbroken, his roar joining hers. Each blast of his weapon echoed the rhythm of her song. Together, though far apart, they fought as one. The storm shrieked. The master staggered. The human stepped forward, his last weapon burning bright. He aimed at the heart of the shadow and fired. The light tore through the storm, splitting the night apart. For a moment there was silence. The storm paused. The snow hung still in the air. Then with a final roar, the shadow collapsed into nothing. The blizzard shattered. The wind died. The world fell quiet. Inside the cabin, the fire burned bright again. The mother gasped, her song stopping as she felt the weight lift. The baby smiled weakly, warmth returning to his skin. The survivors cried with joy, hugging one another. She rushed to the door, pushing it open. The storm was gone, the sky clear, stars shining above. And there, in the snow, stood the human, his weapon lowered, his breath here. Vi. But he was alive. The mother stepped outside, tears streaming down her face. Her baby stirred, cooing softly as she held him out toward the man who had saved them. The human looked at the child, then at her, and though the storm was gone, his eyes still carried its weight. He whispered, almost too softly to hear, "This is why I fight." The morning came with silence. Snow covered the village in a silver blanket, soft and untouched. The storm had gone, but its memory still clung to the air like smoke after fire. The survivors stepped outside one by one, their eyes wide as they looked at the sky. For the first time in weeks, the stars were clear, shining like cold jewels. The alien mother stood near the cabin door, her baby pressed close to her chest. The child breathed calmly now, his small body warm against her skin. His eyes opened slowly, glowing faint green. She kissed his forehead, tears sliding down her cheeks. He had survived the storm, survived the hunters, survived the night. The human stood apart from the others, his figure tall, his weapon resting against his shoulder. Snow clung to his armor, scars of the battle carved into his gear. He looked at the sky as if searching for something hidden beyond the stars. The villagers whispered again, their voices trembling. "Is it truly over? Has the storm been killed?" The human finally turned, his voice calm but heavy. "No, not killed, only broken, for now." The survivors froze at his words. Fear returned to their faces. The mother frowned, her arms tightening around her child. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice low. The human's eyes met hers, sharp and tired. "The storm was only one piece of something larger. It will rise again, somewhere else, on another night." His voice carried the weight of truth, a truth no one wanted to hear. The villagers began to argue. Some shouted that they must leave, others said they should hide. One old man shook his head and whispered, "We cannot run forever." The human nodded slightly, his jaw tightening. "That is why I fight," he said, "because storms like this follow you until you make a stand." The mother stepped closer to him, her baby stirred, his small hand reaching toward the human. She looked at him carefully, her voice soft. "You saved him, you saved us, but who will save you?" The human blinked, surprised by her words. For a moment his face softened, the scars of battle giving way to something else. Sadness, maybe even longing. But he shook his head, his voice firm again. "I don't need saving, not anymore." Still, the mother saw the truth hidden behind his strength. He carried his own storm inside him, a storm of loss, of silence, of ghosts he could never escape. And yet, he still stood, still fought, still chose to protect those who could not fight. The fire inside the cabins burned strong. The villagers began to rebuild, clearing snow, fixing walls. Life returned, fragile but real. The mother sat by the fire again, humming her song as her baby slept. Her voice was stronger now, not only for the child, but for herself. The human listened quietly from the shadows, his weapon never far from reach. He did not sing, but in his silence, there was respect. Night began to fall, the stars brighter than before. The survivors gathered together, sharing food, sharing stories, but the human did not join. He walked alone to the edge of the village, his eyes scanning the horizon. The wind whispered softly, carrying a chill. He knew the storm was gone for now, but not forever, and somewhere beyond the mountains, something else waited, watching. The mother came to him, her baby wrapped warmly in her arms. She stood beside him in silence, looking at the same horizon. Finally she spoke, her voice steady. "You will leave soon, won't you?" The human nodded slowly. "Yes, the storm moves and I must follow." Her heart ached at his words, but she understood. He did not belong to one village, one world. He belonged to the fight. The baby reached out again, his tiny hand brushing the human's glove. The human looked down, his eyes softening. For a brief moment, his hard face cracked, showing warmth. He touched the child's hand gently, and in that small gesture, there was hope. The night grew colder, the stars endless above. The village slept, but the human did not. He stood watch, silent as stone, and far away beyond the mountains, the storm began to stir again. The morning air was thin and sharp. Frost clung to every surface, turning the trees and cabins into crystal. The survivors moved quietly, repairing walls and gathering firewood, but their eyes always drifted to the mountains where the storm had come from. There was silence in the peaks now, but it was the kind of silence that hides secrets. The human stood at the edge of the village, watching the mountains. His weapon rested across his back, his breath slow. The alien mother approached with her baby in her arms. The child's small eyes blinked sleepily, but his breathing was strong. The mother smiled faintly, her voice soft. "He is alive because of you." The human shook his head. "No, because of you, because you never stopped singing." Before she could answer, one of the survivors hurried toward them, his face pale, his body trembling. "There are voices," he whispered. "Voices in the mountains." The human's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "Show me," he said. They climbed a small ridge at the edge of the village. The wind blew softly, carrying strange sounds. At first it was only a faint hum, like the earth itself was breathing. But then the whispers grew clearer. They were not words from any language the mother knew. They were layered, endless, like hundreds of voices speaking together. The sound made her skin crawl. The baby whimpered, pressing against her chest. The human stood still, listening, his face hard. The whispers seemed to call out, echoing across the snow. They spoke of hunger, of cold, of endless night. They spoke of death, not as an end, but as a gift. The mother's breath caught, fear clutching her chest. "What is it?" she asked, her voice shaking. The human's answer was quiet but heavy. The storm was not the enemy, only its hand. This is its voice. The survivors backed away, fear spreading through them. Some cried out, begging to leave. Others argued to stay inside the walls, but the human remained steady, his eyes locked on the mountains. "I have heard whispers like these before," he said. "On other worlds before the storms came, it means something is waking, something older than your people, older than mine." The mother shivered, holding her child close. Her song rose softly, calming the baby. The whispers seemed to falter for a moment, as if the melody pushed them back. The human glanced at her, his eyes sharp but thoughtful. "Your voice," he said, "it weakens them, even here." She shook her head, confused. "It is only a song, a lullaby." But the human's voice was firm. "No, it is more. It reaches where weapons cannot." That night, the survivors gathered in the largest cabin. The fire burned strong, but fear filled the room. They argued over what to do. Some said to abandon the village, to run to the lowlands. Others said to stay, to hide and hope the whispers faded. But the human stood and silenced them with his voice. "Running will not save you. Hiding will not save you. If we do nothing, the storm will return, stronger than before." The mother looked at him, her heart heavy. "You mean to go into the mountains?" she said quietly. The human nodded. "Yes, the voice calls from there, and if it is not stopped, none of us will live." The survivors gasped, some pleading with him not to go, but he only shook his head. "I came here to fight, not to wait for death." The baby stirred, reaching toward the human with tiny fingers. The mother's song rose again, soft but steady. The human listened for a moment, then turned back to the fire. His voice was low but filled with iron. "At dawn, I go to the mountains." The survivors fell silent. The mother held her child close, her heart torn between fear and hope. And outside, in the cold silence of the peaks, the whispers grew louder. Dawn came slowly, a pale light spreading across the frozen land. The mountains stood tall and sharp, their peaks wrapped in mist and ice. The whispers still carried through the air, soft but endless, like voices calling from a deep cave. The survivors gathered at the edge of the village, watching with fearful eyes. The human stood ready, his weapon strapped to his back, his pack filled with supplies. The alien mother stood nearby, her baby wrapped warm against her chest. Her heart ached as she looked at him. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. The human shook his head, his voice steady. "I never do it alone. Your song is with me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She began to hum quietly, a soft melody that drifted into the cold morning air. The human listened for a moment, then turned toward the peaks. Two survivors stepped forward, carrying spears and torches. We will go with you, one said, though his voice trembled. The human studied them, then gave a short nod. Stay close, don't fall behind, and when I tell you to run, you run. The small group set off, their steps crunching against the frozen snow. The villagers watched until the white mist swallowed them. The climb was harsh. The wind cut through their clothes like blades, the snow deep and heavy. The whispers grew louder with every step, wrapping around their minds like chains. One of the survivors stumbled, clutching his head. "They're inside me," he cried. Voices. Too many voices. The human pulled him up, his grip iron strong. "Fight them," he growled. "They want you weak." The survivor nodded, shaking, his breath ragged. The mother's song floated in the human's memory. He closed his eyes for a brief second, hearing her voice. The whispers faltered just enough for him to steady himself. He tightened his grip on his weapon and pushed forward, step by step, higher into the mountains. They passed broken ruins half buried in ice, walls of black stone, carved with symbols no one could read. The survivors stared in awe and fear. "What is this place?" one asked. The human's voice was low. "Older than both our kinds, older than the storm. It is not a place built for life, but for something else." The ground shook suddenly, a deep rumble rolling beneath their feet. Snow fell from the cliffs above, crashing into the valleys. The whispers grew into a roar, hundreds of voices screaming together. The survivors dropped to their knees, covering their ears. The human raised his weapon, scanning the mist. Shapes moved in the distance, tall and thin, shifting like smoke. Not hunters, but something worse. Guardians of the storm. The first shadow leapt from the mist, its body twisting unnaturally. The human fired, light tearing through it, the sound echoing across the peaks. The creature screamed, dissolving into snow, but more followed, crawling from the mist, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The human shouted, his voice sharp, "Stay behind me." The survivors obeyed, clutching their spears though fear shook their hands. The battle raged in the white, the human's whippo, and flashing bright. Each shot cut through the shadows, but they kept coming. The whispers grew louder, pressing into his mind, filling it with doubt. For a moment he staggered, the weight almost breaking him, but then he heard it, faint but clear. The mother's song, carried by the wind. Her voice was far away, yet it reached him, steady and strong. The doubt shattered, his resolve returned. He roared into the storm and fought harder. Step by step, they pushed forward. The ruins opened into a wide valley, filled with broken stone and frozen pillars. At the center was a dark opening in the mountain, a cave that breathed mist. The whispers poured from it, endless and heavy. The human's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "This is where it lives." The survivors trembled, their fear thick in the air. One whispered, "We should go back. No one can fight this." But the human only shook his head. "If we go back, the storm will follow. It will never stop. We end it here." The wind rose, the shadows circled, the whispers screamed. The human tightened his grip on his weapon, his breath steady. He stepped toward the cave, the darkness swallowing his figure. Behind him the survivors followed, fear in their eyes but fire in their steps. The mountains groaned, the world trembled, and inside the cave something ancient opened its eyes.